What is up, Gorilla Nation? It is Relentless here, bringing you yet another Division 2 build video. But if you happen to be new to the channel, or you're just enjoying the content, then please be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button. Also, reach up there, trigger the bell, and turn on post notifications, so that way you never miss a live stream or a video that is uploaded. First and foremost, if you want to see the full extensive gameplay, I have two PvP videos this recently uploaded in the last week utilizing this build. It was asking me to actually put my build up so I can show it off because it completely shreds, and I do agree. But you also have to ask yourself, what is your particular playstyle? So we're going to go over the build and then go into the particulars on the reasoning why I chose what, and what would probably more or less help you figure out what would be the best option for you. But for that full extensive gameplay, those links will be in the description, so definitely go check that out. So first, as we all know, it is Bloodsucker. There's multiple different ways in which to do it, and it is a armor-based talent. And it is depleting an enemy's armor as a stack of bonus armor, and that would be 15% for PvP for 10 seconds. Max stack, and it is 2 in PvP, not 6. Now, the different variations of this would more or less, instead of the skill power route, you would stack on all health, but that would not give you more or less any sustainability, survivability, because the only form of healing that you would actually heal, since you would have no skill power whatsoever, is basically run the demolitionist like those typical bots do, just for the specialist weapon, the grenade launcher, because they can't really getting kills with their Bloodsucker build at their 915. So that's why they have to showcase that. And I would say that would be an alright way if you prefer it that way, but this way will give you more sustainability, more survivability, and multiple different ways and variations in which to heal yourself while you're still shooting, laying down fire. And not just pick a specialist just because it has the best specialist weapon in the game, and you need to farm those, supply drops and get those specialist ammo so you can just blow people up. That's not why you actually choose a specialist. Now, you can go with a technician in this situation. That would considerably boost my skill power, because the technician would give you 50% skill power, plus you can choose either plus 10% extra healing on healing skills or extra 10% damage on skills. And then of course you can use the hive if you prefer it that way. You can throw in some BTSU gloves and run like a 211-7, but that's been played out in title update 5. Instead of just utilizing like the demolitionist back before we had the technician. And since they nerfed a lot of the auxiliary batteries and the skill power itself, pretty much the 311-7 build of old is just more or less transformed into more or less just the same build, just having to switch specialist into the technician, so that way you still have that 3000 skill power. But you don't nearly have as much DPS even by using on the ropes and spotter, even if you have perfect spotter. This way you're not clogging up or taking up any skills that's unnecessary, because with the on the ropes perfect spotter, yes, you don't actually have to have the pulse on because of the attachment on the technician, but then that kind of handcuffs you and puts more armor behind your back, so you can't really fully utilize your build, lay down tons of DPS, but yet still have a lot of survivability, a lot of tankiness, and more importantly, you're more or less replenishing your armor as you go, so that way you can stay up and lay down more cover fire and more or less either help your teammates or actually be the last one standing. Now, I have two ways. The way you see on the screen with 492k armor, 81k health, with 1805 skill power. And then I have this other variation, depending on your playstyle, 506.9k armor, 78.7k health. And then empowered is not figured in on my skill power. The skill power will actually be 2100. But let's go over the main variation, and since only one piece has changed on that second one, we'll start with the first one and then we'll go to the second one. So start out with the weapons. And I guess more importantly, since we were talking about the specialist, why I chose the specialist I did. The survivalist, because of the healer Pokeball, is the best heal in the game, so why not utilize it? And with 1805 skill power, then I get a pretty decent heal. It's not like exactly the absolute greatest, but over 20k, and with better mods, then you can upgrade that. Of course, if you have better rolls, you can further your skill power there. But that is definitely more healing than I would get from a chem launcher with that skill power, and then plus it frees me up to use any other secondary skill that I want to. I like to run the Firefly sometimes, the Booster Hive if I need to get away or get around in a hurry, especially if I'm just doing the Den of Thieves. Then I can go around and hit those boxes. You can put up drones and turrets to help proc the spark. It's just so versatile. You can choose whatever secondary skill that you want to. And let's say, for instance, LMGs is not your cup of tea, you prefer AR. With this particular setup, all you would have to do is swap out the gloves for the likes of a Fenris, with devastating at least one blue, and then boom, there you go, you're having a Bloodsucker AR build. And it's the same way with any particular archetype weapon that you choose. All you have to do is switch out the gloves to, say, a Suck Me Off piece for SMG, the Patriot for LMG like you see on the screen, or a Fenris piece for ARs, or even, you can even, dive even further and even go with Overlord and swap out the knee pads and just run to Overlord, and then you have a Bloodsucker rifle build. But we're talking LMGs. Now my Pestilence is hitting for 31.2k, and not just because of the piss pool that you inflict on your enemy once you completely finish them off after you land those 10 shots and kill them. They turn into a pretty much a miss of piss. But also for the holster talent, because the meta is basically just a stats effect update, I would say, not more or less a meta. It's just the title update for all things stats effects. And Outcast Resilience works out really, really nice in this situation. While holstered, gain 20% bonus armor for 5 seconds whenever you are affected by blind, bleed, or burning. And with 492k armor, that 20% can really come in clutch. That's like 80k armor, and you're good to go. Now, as far as my secondary, I like the RPK just because of the shortened reload time. So that way I can lay down more damage and don't have to reload and it take 5 seconds, and then I don't have to force and put a spot on my holster just to run filler up. So that way I can reload those 100 rounds. Magazines and the other LMGs such as the Pestilence, the MK46, and the M60. So that's where I like the black market RPK. Of course, with Unhinged, Allegro, Protected Reload, and there's the attachments as followed. Now, if you like the MK46, then with this particular build, mine would be at 33.2k, and of course also with Unhinged and Allegro. Now, you can go with M60, I should say, but the RPM is a little lower and you would get a little more base damage, so I prefer the RPM and of course the accuracy and stability over the likes of the M60 in this situation. Now, as far as the holstered talent on my sidearm, since I'm utilizing the RPK that already has Protected Reload, and if you want to get a little bit more survivability with all things stats effects, not only the bonus armor, then you just want to run Stop, Drop, and Roll on your sidearm. If you don't know what Stop, Drop, and Roll is, it is while equipped, rolling removes burning, bleed, and poison stats effects can occur once every 60 seconds. So you don't necessarily have to spec out into hazard protection just to, for the sake of all things, hives or burned or anything like those in the dark zone. You can just typically know your surroundings, know how to play, and then know the situations where if you're running a Pestilence, you get that bonus armor that'll help you out with damage wise, and then the Stop, Drop, and Roll actually comes in handy, so that way you can focus on other things. But with the way that I have my skill power, and as you see in the gameplay video, I can replenish my health and do it very, very significantly and efficiently, and stay upright and deal out tons of damage and never have to really worry. So that's why you would go, in my opinion, skill power over health, because Bloodsucker is a armor-based talent. Now, some would probably go 400k armor and like 150k health. But with the ARs running amok in the DZ with that high 29% baked in damage to health, then you would want to go more armor and focus on armor more than you would actually with health. But health does have it, its place, and can help you, at least survive long enough to where you can heal back up. And since I'm 492k armor and with my heals, that's why go with health. But if you can, by all means, do as I did and go with skill power. I have 515 skill power on my mask, 21,960 health, and an offensive mod slot with 6% by way going to my LMG. Now, a second piece of True Patriot, this was actually in the Den of Thieves. I rolled the 735 skill power and it had 26,728 health, which is pretty decent. All my other ones, such as that one, worked, but as you can see, it only has 478 skill power, and since I can't re-roll the skill power, I had to find me another holster, and this was the best one I could come across. And then it has 2 offensive mod slots, And the first one, I get another 6% going to my LMG, and the second one, 6.5% going to my LMG, for a total of 12.5% weapon damage just on this holster. Now, the third piece is the True Patriot knee pads. I have 12% total armor on it. It comes with an offensive and defensive mod slot. On the offensive, I get another 5.5% to LMG, and the defensive mod, I get 5644 armor, 3% total armor, and then 3% explosive resistance. Now, if you don't know, the 3 pieces of True Patriot will allow you to have the red, white, and blue, and you'll see that rotating on the screen in the gameplay. It says, when you shoot an enemy, apply a debuff to them. Debuffs are applied in the order of red, white, and blue, cycling every 2 seconds. That's where you'll see them constantly change. Red decreases damage dealt by the enemy, while white restores armor to friendlies that shoot this enemy, and blue boosts skill haste to friendlies that shoot this enemy. So, instead of it more or less going to friendlies, that would be just more or less, since you're only running the 3-piece and not the 4, then that more or less is only going to affect you. And as you'll see in the gameplay, I did do a little bit of solo, so it definitely can come in handy, and plus you get an offensive mod slot. Now on to the chest piece. Since 1-piece out summit gives me 20% skill haste, that does help me out with getting my heal back faster and whatever secondary skill I'm getting. And I put 22.5% total armor on it, and already had 40,958 armor. And as we were talking about Bloodsucker, depleting an enemy's armor as a stack of 25% bonus armor for 10 seconds, max stack is 6. In PvP, that is, I believe, plus 15% bonus armor, and max stack is 2, requires 11 defensive Legos. And then it has an offensive, utility, and defensive mod slot. In the offensive, another 5.5% going to my LMG. In the utility, 206 Seeker skill power, 122 Hive skill power, and 40 skill power. In the defensive, 4865 armor, 2736 health, and then 3.5% total armor. Now moving on to the 1 Heligard, that gives me 5% total armor. Also on the attributes, I have 5.5% total armor, 5% weapon damage, and then 30,476 armor with hardened, plus 15% armor. Spark, damaging enemies with skills or explosives, grant 15% weapon damage for 15 seconds, and it has an offensive and a defensive mod slot. In the offensive, another 6% LMG damage. In the defensive, 4869 armor, 3.5% total armor, and then 3% explosive resistance. Now, the 6th and final piece would be the Patriot gloves. 11% LMG damage, 2917 health, and of course devastating. As soon as I find better gloves, maybe with a higher health roll on them, then that would actually, work out better. And then as I find something like the 13% from the Motherly gloves, I could add yet another 2% weapon damage onto the gloves. Now over the second variation, but first we'll scroll through the character sheet. And as you'll see as followed, nothing, really totally out there. Total of 81.5% all weapon damage and LMG damage. And then I believe I only have like 6% explosive resistance, but that 6% does come in handy. 15% protection from elites. And those are as follow. Now let's say, for example, you can go a little bit less on the DPS, but you want a little more sustainability and survivability, let's say because a lot of people utilizing a lot of explosives, but yet you don't want to result into having to put on 2-piece Negotiator's Dilemma, and that's why this other variation I have set up. As you can see, 2165, and the only piece that is different besides just the defensive mods, which would be these 4, would be the knee pads. I went with a Heligard knee pad, 13.5% total armor with empowered. It gives me an additional 20% skill power, and the 2 defensive mod slots. As you can see, the difference in both of these, one was in the knee pads of the other, but I added you're able to add a second defensive mod slot, and then I added a little bit more armor and a little more explosive resistance. Same as on the chest piece. Just change out the mod, added a little bit more explosive resistance. But everything else is essentially the same. It just allows you to have a secondary build to be a little more tanky, and as you can see, my Pestilence is still hitting for over 30k. So all in all, you only lose like around 6% weapon damage depending on your mod. Usually the average is around 6%, but you gain just a little bit of armor, and my health could considerably go up, but I put on explosive resistance on my defensive mods, and I'll show you. And depending on your resistance mods that you have, the explosive kind, you can, get upwards to 40% explosive resistance and still be considerably a lot tanky. As you can see, there's my damage numbers. Only that 6% has actually changed. And for this particular build, 17.21% explosive resistance, but as I stated, with better mods, you can actually get up there and reach 40% because you have those 4 defensive. But if you're more on the DPS side, that is typically why I run this one. Get a little more DPS, I have the same amount of heals. I don't really need that empowered, but just peeling off that armor as fast as possible and getting those procs from Bloodsucker comes in really handy, and that extra DPS works out, and especially when you pair it with Spark. When you're utilizing the Pestilence, anybody that walks into that mist of piss, they're going to get a lot of damage, but also that mist will proc Spark, as well as using anything hive related, as far as any kind of skills, or the fire grenades, since they have a much larger radius than the regular frag grenades, and that causes a status effect that also proc will Spark. So you get tons and tons of DPS, and it is a lot of fun. And as you can see in the gameplay video, it completely shreds and melts just with 492k armor and 81k health, and I have the survivability due to my heals. But there is one more variation that'll be coming up later on this week. It is that puppy right there. Yes, it is 403k armor Bloodsucker build, but it has with crit chance and the same amount of heals on it. It is really, really fun. And so stay tuned for that. But I hope you all are having a fantastic holiday season. Merry Christmas once again, and we'll see you guys fudging later.